is it? No. Alright, well, I thought I had a freaking clown nose I could strap to my head and be like, hey there everybody, how you doing? It's time to talk about Buggies, Bara, know me, but can't find it anywhere, so guess we're gonna have to do Plan B. Well, hey there, kids! How you doing? Like I said, today's video is gonna be all about Buggies, Bara, know me. Are you guys ready to talk about the clown star? I know you are. Okay, that's, yeah, I forgot to tell you, Plan B is just a little bit of terrifying. Still way better than Plan C by a country mile, though. And Plan D, actually, okay, Plan D is fairly chill compared to that, but Plan E, on the other hand, whoa, Plan E makes Plan B look like Plan W, like, holy crap. Alright, well, that was the addition of Tekking Teaches the Alphabet. Okay, so, yesterday I made that Wano video, and I had that little kind of fake out at the beginning where it's like, hey guys, want to talk about Wano? Because I had all that, like, samurai crap behind me. It's like, yeah, let's talk about something else. Let's talk about Buggy's Devil Fruit instead, as a joke. And some people were like, you know what, let's actually talk about Buggy's Devil Fruit. And I sat down and thought about it, and I'm like, you know, I've made videos about Buggy before. I've never talked about his Devil Fruit, though, in a video. And when you consider that it was actually the first Devil Fruit that Luffy ever went up against as a threat, that's rather significant, you know? And also you have to consider, remember way back at the beginning of One Piece when Captain Morgan was explaining the Devil Fruit concept? He was like, Devil Fruits are very rare, but it's said that if you eat one, you gain a superpower beyond human imagining. There's also one that can turn you into a jacket. The poor son of a bitch that has to get that one. But beyond that, great power beyond your possible imagination. However, he also said they're very rare, to the point where they were considered, like, mythical. Like, you couldn't get your hands on one, right? That was, like, very unusual to find one, right? Especially in the East. And then in the very next arc, you encounter Buggy, who has a Devil Fruit. But it makes sense because he used to travel on Goldie Roger's ship in the Grand Line. He is the only villain aside from Smoker who had a Devil Fruit during the East Blue. Smoker also, though, grew up on the Grand Line. So that just goes to show, Devil Fruits in the Four Blues, they're more rare than on the Grand Line. Okay, so Buggy had one, and then Smoker, they were both on the Grand Line, that made sense. Every other villain in the East Blue, Captain Kuro, Don Krieg, Arlong, all of their crews didn't have any Devil Fruit powers, okay? So that was the first, like, Devil Fruit threat Luffy had to go up against, and it seemed rather appropriate because Buggy's Bara no Mi is pretty much like the opposite of Luffy's Gamu no Mi. Not opposite in the sense that he's, like, anti-rubber. We're not going, like, Black Clover Asta with this. He's like, I have the anti-Gamu no Mi. Oh god, I hope Oda never does that. I hope he never comes up with, like, here, like, Vegapunk invented negative Devil Fruits. You know, now you have the negative, Magu no Mi. It's the only way to defeat Akainu. It's opposite in the sense whereas Luffy, is made of rubber, he's immune to certain kinds of damage. So, like, bludgeoning damage, alright? I'm just gonna put this up here for no, you know, reason. I just felt like, it's pretty cool, right? It's a lich, I think, you know? I'm just gonna set that up there. Alright, so Luffy is immune to bludgeoning damage, you know? So if you take a club or a hammer or something and try to hit him really hard, it'll be like a cartoon with Luffy. He'll just turn into like an accordion and just whoop, and then just knock it back. Bullets, also. I mean, you would consider the bullets are moving really, really fast and they're super hot. They would damage Luffy a little bit, but it's anime, so bullets. Anything that basically doesn't have, like, a blade to it or kind of like a spiky, you know, attachment, it's just gonna bounce right off of Luffy. So Buggy is the opposite of that in the sense that he is still susceptible to bludgeoning damage. If you take a club and smack Buggy upside the face, it'll damage him, but when it comes to piercing and slashing damage, nothing. Alright, you try to slash him with a sword and cut his arm off, he can just deattach his arm before the slash comes in contact, or when the slash is right about to hit, it just seems like an automatic thing where his arms just deattach and it doesn't hurt him at all in the slightest. Even if he doesn't, because he doesn't know hockey, but even if an attack comes from a direction that he doesn't sense, like a blue gory just throws its axe and lops off Buggy's head from behind him while he's laughing like a maniac and doesn't even know what's going on around him, it automatically detaches. So it's interesting because it kind of harkens back to what Crocodile said. Crocodile was talking about how if you train with your devil fruit to a certain extent, you can like reflexively respond to things. So he could reflexively turn his body into sand even if he doesn't actually know an attack is coming his way, right? And that helped him out quite a bit. Now with Buggy, I don't know if Buggy, he's had his fruit for a very long time. He had his fruit when he was a cabin boy or an apprentice pirate aboard Roger's ship, which was, you know, at least 25, it was like 24, 25 years ago minimum when he ate it. Could have eaten it before that, of course, but the point is that, he could have been training with it so much that he could have created that, like, reflexive thing with it, or it could have just been an automatic thing granted by the fruit. You know, kind of the same deal with Luffy. It's like when someone goes to, you know, fire a shot at Luffy from behind him, even before Luffy knew observation hockey, you know, it's not like Luffy has to be aware that an attack is coming to bounce it back. It just bounces back. Kind of the same deal with Buggy. Someone jumps up from behind him, like let's say there's a ninja, you know, like Raizo jumps up behind Buggy and tries to lop his head off. You know, it seems like the second that blade touches his skin, or even maybe a little bit before it even touches his skin, as in the case with Mihawk, it just deattaches his body, so the blade just kind of passes through. And so that moment right there when Mihawk slashed up Buggy, it was a great moment. It was hilarious at the time, you know, before you actually sit down and think about it. He's like, well, wait a second here. If Mihawk knew hockey, which he does, because he has a black blade, then why didn't it cut Buggy? Okay, we know about black blades now in Wano. We know that even though you have a black sword, it probably just increases the durability of the blade. It doesn't really necessarily cater to all the different aspects of armament hockey. So it's not like just because you have a black blade, you can just swing it and damage devil fruit users. It's a black blade. It's the users used, you know, armament hockey maybe a long time ago, the original wielder, and it just permeated into the blade, changed the color of the blade, increased the stats of the blade so it's more durable and everything like that. But when it comes to like actually afflicting damage to devil fruit users, that's not the case. Case in point, when Zoro used Shusui to slice Monet in half, he made a point to mention he did not use hockey, but he still had a black blade, and it sliced Monet, but it sliced her like a normal blade would, where she got cut in half, but because she's a Logia, she didn't die, and she could reform herself. She was just terrified. So if that was the case, you know, having a black sword just with the armament like automatically damages Logia, Monet would have been sliced in half, whether or not Zoro would have wanted to use hockey there. So yeah, you could just say that with Mihawk then. Mihawk was fighting against Luffy at that time, and then he used Buggy as a scapegoat, like Gamu Gamu no Jet scapegoat, and just pulled Buggy there to block the shot. You know, like, Mihawk was saying that he wanted to fight Luffy, like, seriously, like, I'm sorry, Shanks, but I'm gonna go after Luffy, you know, I'm gonna go at him full strength here, I wanna see what he's really capable of. You'd think that he would be using hockey, but maybe at the same time, it's like, okay, alright, I'm gonna go after Luffy, I'm gonna try to attack him, like, seriously, but I'm not going to go, like, crazy all out with hockey and everything. I just kind of want to see what he's made of. See if he can stand up to my regular slashes. That's probably a better way of looking at it. And then all of a sudden Buggy is in front of him and Mihawk's just like, okay, he's throwing a blibbering idiot at me. I'm not going to waste hockey on him. So either Mihawk did not use hockey, but if he did use hockey, then that means that the attachment of the Bara no Mi has to happen before the blade actually makes contact. Maybe, like, there's a little bit of a field around Buggy, and there is kind of a field. There's, like, a area of effect when it comes to his devil fruit, as seen here, when he separates himself. As long as his feet are on the ground, or they're being held by somebody else, as long as his feet have a firm grounding, then he can kind of move his body around in this fixed space. So the concept that there might be just a little bit of an invisible kind of field around Buggy's body at all time, and whenever it senses slashing or piercing damage, it just poop, you know, pops off. That's not ridiculous to assume either. So, you know, take it whatever you will. He survived slashes from Mihawk. I consider that a huge accomplishment, whether or not he was using hockey, and whether or not what kind of devil fruit you have to begin with. You know, you survived an encounter with Dracula Mihawk. That deserves some applause. You know what I mean? Let's give some applause to Buggy. Okay, that's enough. Alright, so the Bara no Mi he was actually rather clever with how he used it, okay? I think he could be more clever with how he uses it in the future, or rather, he could train up his actual body and not be reliant on his devil fruit so much. Like, if Buggy really trained, if he hit the gym, got a little bit more buff, maybe learned some hockey, it would be rather devastating. His devil fruit is not a bad devil fruit, and it's not even like he uses it in bad ways. It's just like, if he trained himself, he would get, more effective at it. So, one of the most common attacks he does is like his chop chop cannon, where he usually has a weapon in his hand, like knives or something. He caters to knives. I have a pair of scissors here, but he'll have like a bladed weapon in his hand, and then he'll fire off his punch and it separate his arm, and it just keeps flying at the opponent as long as they're in his little bubble of range. Also keep in mind, the momentum in things manage to stay, so when he throws a punch, that momentum begins and kind of like serves as like a launching platform for his arm when it gets flying off toward the opponent, and then his arm hits and then stabs him in the process. He can also do a punch, just as equivalent to Luffy's Gumu Gumu no pistol. He can just, fire a punch, and the fist separates and then hits the opponent and knocks him back. He does have a fair amount of strength, in the sense that he can, like, lift up a blue gory using his power. Like, he grabs a blue gory with his body and then disassembles it, like, different stages of, like, a launching platform, like, boosh! Boosh! And then, with just his hands, he's able to hold a blue gory, which is this giant blue gorilla kind of dude, up in the air a fair distance, and keep in mind, like, all of the muscles and everything stay, like, phantasmally connected to him. So even though the blue gory is only being held up by Buggy's, like, hands in the process, like, I can't get down, it's still all of the same strength as if Buggy himself was lifting him up. So, I guess Buggy does lift, but not enough, because even after launching an attack where he kind of like spins the blue gory in the air and then drops his head clean on the ground, the blue gory got back up, whereas Luffy could defeat them in a single punch. So, Buggy is strong. He's able to carry around a giant battle axe through most of Impel Down. He's strong, like, in our world, okay? He could lift, but in the One Piece world, it's like, you can lift up a giant gorilla 30 feet into the air, but can you finish them off with one punch? You could Saitama the Blue Gory. That's how you know you're really strong in the One Piece world, I guess. There's higher standards of this, is what I'm saying. So, some other attacks that he's done, a few ones that are actually clever. He has his Dismemberment Cannon, which, okay, here's how this works. Instead of just flying off his fist, he'll go to throw a punch, and he'll separate, like, pretty much everything from, like, his elbow. So, this entire section right here will come flying at the opponent. And once again, he'll have, like, daggers or knives or something in his, hand to, like, stab his enemy with. So they get flung off. If you're quick enough, you'd think, like, oh, it's coming at me, maybe I can grab the arm and it'll stop before it hits me. That's what their natural reaction would be. Like, grab the forearm and just, ha-ha! But he can separate continuously. Like, he can separate himself down to, like, well, I don't want to say microscopic, or like the size of dust particles or something, but maybe. I even saw a comment that somebody was like, Buggy's ultimate technique. He disassembles himself at the molecular level and just goes into somebody else's body and then reassembles himself, and their body just explodes. There's just blood everywhere as Buggy reassembles himself inside of the other person's body. Dude, you don't even have to go that far. If he could just disassemble his hand alone into microscopic particles and then, like, get breathed by somebody else, like, and then just reform a hand inside their lungs would just pop, like, right there. Like, that's all you have to do, right? But anyway, yeah, if, somebody grabs the forearm, the fist can deattach at the wrist and continue the momentum. So it's like, oh no, it's coming at me! Ha-ha! And then it still hits you, and there you go. So I think his brain is on the right track with this, how he's using his fruit. And also his most ingenious technique yet, the Buggy car, or the Bara car, where he separates his body. He has to have his crew carry around some wheels and a propulsion system, but he can make himself into a car. That's pretty fleek. But, he's on the right track here with, trying to fake out your opponent and everything. Just like, okay, I have all my body parts basically in this entire dome encompassing encompasses my body. And, you know, each body part is still connected back to me. So, Buggy, at the end of the day, I mean, he could still, like, you know, he can launch off his entire arm and then disassemble it at the elbow, then disassemble it at the wrist, and he can have, like, a blade, but being just carried by 2 fingers, and just disassemble those to sneak up behind the opponent and just shing, you know, that's all you need, right? So, I mean, he hasn't really done stuff like that level. There is probably a limit to how much he can disassemble himself, but maybe it's like just a thing with training. Like when he first ate the fruit, when Shanks scared him and he accidentally deep-throated an entire pineapple, because as you do, you know, like, oh no, I accidentally just ate an entire pineapple, that's insane. Shanks is just like, damn, Buggy, you got skills. You know, that's how he got the fruit. Maybe he could only disassemble himself, like, at the joints at that point. Like, he could disassemble himself at the shoulder, the elbow, the knees. He couldn't, like, split himself up in super tiny parts. But over the years, he trained with it, and now he could separate his, like, his fingers and his toes, and if he wanted to, and everything, his head. I really like the animation of him, because I went back and watched a few episodes in the Impel Down arc with Buggy, and sometimes the animation is just, like, he's yelling at Luffy. It's not really a big scene, but his head is just popping off in between frames, and it just fits because he can do that. You know, so you can imagine getting into a conversation with Buggy. If he got mad at you, he would just start, like, breaking apart his body at, like, random points, and just like, how dare you do that? And he pops off his head and pops off his hands, and just like they're shaking in the air, and they reassemble, and then they... That's just Buggy. He just seems like an hilarious guy. He's a clown after all, right? I wonder if I brought this up before, I think, in Buggy's importance video, but I am curious as, like, what the origin is with the clown thing. Like, were his parents into that, or was it something forced upon him? Like, why clown? Was it that, is his nose natural? That's one of the most undiscovered mysteries of One Piece. You know, Sanji's eyebrow, which we discovered the source of that, and Buggy's nose. Like, what's the origin of that, right? We already know about his hair. What about his nose? Okay, so after the time skip, Buggy, I fear he might have gotten a little bit more complacent in his new position as a Seven Warlord, one of the members of the Seven Warlords of the Sea, because I don't think he's really fighting anymore. You know, at least when he was a pirate just wandering around East Blue, at least, you know, then he was like, all right, I'm captain of the Buggy crew. I have to fight. I have to kind of show my strength to my crew. And when he was in Impel Down, he had to kind of fight to get out of there. But when it comes to where he's at right now at Kalibali Island, False Bravado Island, and he has an entire crew, like legions of pirates working under him, his Buggy's delivery service, Buggy doesn't need to fight on his own anymore. Buggy can literally just stay inside Kalibali Island in that giant tent in his big top and just shout like all day, like, ah yes, my men, my loyal Buggy's delivery service, go out there in the world and show them who you represent. Meanwhile, he just stays there and just eats all day and just chills out. Watches the One Piece equivalent of Netflix, whatever that happens to be, you know? And so for that reason, I don't think he's really been working on new techniques over the time skip, nor has he been really improving in terms of hockey or anything of that nature. Now, something he does do now, which might seem ridiculous and just also going along with the theme of false bravado, but actually is really clever if you think about it. So when we see Buggy after the time skip, right, he's huge, he's giant. What he does is he takes like a giant tarp, like a blanket, and then he, you know, pops his hands on each side of the blanket, and then disassembles his head from his actual body, puts his head on the blanket, and he can move the blanket around as if it's his actual body, right? So to make himself seem huge, like, I am the Lord of Kalibali Island, one of the 7 warlords, Buggy D. Clown, you know, but in reality, he's just like a normal dude. He's like normal size, okay? Once again, that might seem kind of goofy and silly, but think about this. If we're gonna go along with this with the same kind of logic like King in One Punch Man, the kind of character Buggy is, where, you know, he's not really physically powerful, but he just has a tremendous amount of luck and his lies are able just to get him places. You know, admittedly not as much as King's were. King literally stared a monster to death last chapter. I don't see Buggy doing that yet. But, so, you know, Buggy has this huge imposing form. All of the people of Buggy's delivery service, except for his, you know, former crew, like Alvida and Mr. 3 and everybody in Kabaji, they know what he really looks like. All the other people don't. and probably all of the enemies that he's probably incurred since then don't know what his actual body is like. So imagine Buggy's on the battlefield with that giant, tarp blanket thing, and he's like, I am indestructible! And, like, a rival pirate is like, there he is, one of the 7 warlords, Buggy. I'll take him down. I'll stab him right through the heart and be revered as, like, a famous pirate. And they go to stab Buggy or launch a cannonball and it hits him right in the middle of the blanket. It wouldn't do any damage. Do you know how much surface area that thing takes up? If you're gonna launch a cannonball or something, or try to attack Buggy, it's gonna hit the blanket, right? It's just more obvious, more space there. So, imagine somebody doesn't know what his real body looks like. They fire a cannonball or several cannonballs right through his body, and it just passes right through. Buggy's completely fine, just like, ha ha ha, you fools! And everyone's looking at him like, what? He is invincible! We blasted a hole right through his body! He's not even bleeding! What kind of monster is this? We can't! He's invincible! He's immortal and invulnerable in all ways! We have to get out of here! Even if they lopped off his head in that sense. Like, let's say, let's say, alright, I am Buggy the Clown! I am huge and gigantomatic! Alright, so let's say somebody goes at him trying to lop off his head, right? And let's say they just cut it, like, right here on the blanket, right? So, you just lop off the head here, but it's just part of the blanket. So, unless you're really good, unless you are, like, a trained swordsman, like Zoro or Mihawk or somebody that can actually, like, aim, like, exactly where you want to hit it, right where the groove is, like, you have to actually hit him in the head itself, and it has to, well, no, even if it was a sword in that case, you can't cut him because of the Bara. Okay, so Buggy's invincible then in this form. This is Buggy's invincible form. I've solved the problem. There it is. There it is. You can't hope to defeat me. I mean, if you took a gun and you fired and you managed to get really lucky, then yeah. But, you have to keep in mind, this also increases his mobility, right? If he has his feet on the ground, his feet are attached to the blanket, the feet have to stay grounded in order for him to move the way he does. And so his hands are on the side, and then his head is on top, right? Well, he doesn't have his regular body hooked up to him, so he can move it in freedom of movement. He doesn't have a spine in this form, so he can kind of just move whatever angle he wants to avoid attacks. So if somebody takes out a gun or something and just, like, tries to aim for the head, he can just maneuver his body around to a point where it's like, it's the Buggy blanket dance of mesmerization. Ooh, you can't see where you're attacking now, you fool. Alright, I'm gonna stop doing that because that's just getting silly. But yeah, I mean, it's not a bad idea. And by the way, Buggy will be appearing in freaking Film Stampede. I guess it's called Film Stampede. I think it might just be called One Piece Stampede. So, he's appearing in Stampede in that form, in the giant blanket indestructible form. So, I will see what he does. But, that might have some upsides to it, but at the same time, he doesn't have anything else. Also, there's drawbacks to it as well. For one thing, he can't attack as much because he's missing most of his body. And where is his body? Because, here's the deal. He can take his body outside of the dome. It's not like he can only move it like he hits an invisible force field or anything. No, if, like what happened at the beginning of One Piece during Orange Town, when Luffy, knocked away his torso and then they tied him up and he got reassembled and it was Chibi Buggy, just his head and his feet and his hands. Luffy blasted that part away and then his torso remained. So his torso's still there. And it doesn't, like, decay or anything without him. It's just that Buggy cannot control it if it's too far away. But as long as, like, the head stays alive, his body will continue to live. And then Buggy can, like, even if it's just Chibi Buggy and he doesn't have a stomach, he can still eat to nourish himself. I'm sure he probably peed his pants a few times because Buggy's just wandering around as a chibi and he doesn't have equipment anymore. And he's like, well, I feel like I have to go to the bathroom now. Well, I'm definitely going to the bathroom. I hope my body is somewhere dignified right about now. I hope they get me a new pair of pants. I hope somebody's changing me. Because he does. So everything's still connected. It's just he has to get back into range, and then when he does, he can reassemble himself proper. Also, when he separates himself, you would think that this would be a very bloody kind of devil fruit because, he separates his hand. Can you look inside of his arm? Can you see, this is the real reason there can't be a live-action adaptation of Buggy. Can you imagine? Oh, God, you just look inside of his arm arm and he separates it, there's bone and muscle in there. Like if it's kind of like Law's Oppie Oppie no Mi, to the sense where he could separate his heart and his organs would still be beating, you know? It's disturbing. We haven't seen him do stuff like that. We haven't seen him like Law does, like removing his heart and his organs just to like his individual limbs and his body parts on the surface. He can't like, he might be able to, I don't know. He might be able to be like, all right, I want to, you know, like disassemble my arm here. Just, okay, now I'm going to pull out my bone. You know, set that over there. I don't think he could do anything like that, because that's kind of now getting into the realms of the Oppie Oppie no Mi. So he could just disassemble his body, whatever's on the surface, right? He can't, like, separate things on the inside. But still, like, in the anime, whenever he separates his arm, you don't see it. It's just regular flesh-colored on all sides. You know, for one thing, probably saves the animators trouble of animating every little piece of muscle and bone. And also, it just, Oda came out and said it. It is like, can you imagine if I drew this realistically? It's the same thing with clothing. You know, like, how come whenever certain characters, like when freaking Logias go into their elements, like, you know, Akainu turns into magma, his clothes also turn into magma. And how other Devil Fruit users, like when Chopper goes into his monster point, his hat grows to gargantuan sizes as well. The reason why Oda said it is, like, if I drew this realistically, there would be way too much nudity in this for it to be a shonen manga. It'd be cool to be a seinen manga, but, I mean, can you imagine, like, every single time Chopper went into his freaking monster point or even his heavy point, his shorts would rip, you know, and we'd have like the Hulk issue going on here. So Oda decided, and also that's kind of funnier in a sense, you know. Oda's just like, you know what, if they have a Devil Fruit power that allows them to turn into an element or allows them to turn in like giant size or super small size, screw it, I'll just have their clothing change with it. There are a few exceptions to that, like whenever Jewelry Bonnie changes into either her young self or her older self, the clothes don't change, nor do the ones with her crew when she changes the ages of them. So there's some, you know, exceptions there every now and then. I honestly think that's just one for more provocativity. So Oda can have it like, oh yes, when Jewelry Bonnie is in her child form, she has perfectly fitting clothing, but when she goes into like her 20s, I have to keep the clothing to shrink so we could see more of her. That's the reason. Yeah, that's the reason why Jewelry Bonnie's clothes don't change. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, well, anyway, that's the Bara no Mi, a very useful fruit, and if Buggy trained with it, which he probably won't, you know, because where we're at right now in the series, he hasn't probably for the last 2 years. I mean, even if he started right now, I don't think he would get very far with it. But, you know, you think of all the applications here. If you can learn armament hockey with the thing, and you attach it, you know, you armament hockey up your hand and disattach it, and you punch your enemies from a distance, that'd be pretty cool. You know, you would be at risk too, especially if you're not seeing exactly where the, you know, your body parts going if it's behind a corner or something, but, you know, it would be neat, and it would be cool, and you can't mix and match. Well, you can, but you can't. So, like, you know, he can't do the same thing Robin can do and, like, you know, deattach his eye and then attach it to his hand. He can deattach his head and attach that to his hand, and then he could see it that way, but not in, like, the Hana no Mi way. What would his awakening be? I mean, I guess the awakening is pretty simple. It would just be able to disassemble the objects around him that are in his bubble and that are in his dome of influence. He could separate buildings or animals in the area or stuff like that, and he could freely control them as well. So if there's like, oh no, I'm being attacked by a pirate, there's a few birds flying overhead, I'll use my awakening and to separate the birds' bodies and have feathers fly around everywhere and just a flurry of just bird parts, and like, or you could disassemble the ground or something and change it into like a staircase to escape down a hill or something. I don't know, I'm just throwing out ideas, but not a bad devil fruit. Not a bad devil fruit, it's just being wielded by a literal clown. So, yeah. But hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking. Hold on. Oh, wait, no. Oh my god, I just had a brilliant idea. Hold on a second. Oh, the payoff of this is going to be immense. Alright. You ready? Alright. Whoa! Bye, everybody!